All right, in today's video, I want to talk specifically about a really special subject that kind of encompasses the essence of Sarasota. So let's dive in and check it out.
And for those that don't know me real quick, I'm Adam Hancock. I have a real estate group here in Southwest Florida, and I post daily video content on Florida relocation and investment guidance. Please like and subscribe for access to over 100 videos in the last 12 months and counting.
Okay, so the main subject matter of this video is really related to the value proposition of any given city. So obviously Sarasota is going to be our focus here, but this is kind of a broader theme that gives more context to the unique cities themselves. So like, for instance, like take Florida as a whole, right? There's a lot of cities that have the average 300 days of sunshine, right? There's a lot of cities that offer a beach life. There's a lot of cities that are on the Southwest Florida Gulf Coast in addition to Sarasota. So which creates the value proposition of why move to a given area. It really, there's a main kind of attraction in my mind to each one specifically. And so I want to get in deeper there. And regardless of like criteria pointing you to I want to be in the suburbs or the school zones, this would be like if all is equal, what is the reason people even made an area popular in the first place? So that's kind of what I want to get into here. We're going to talk about Sarasota, the greater area. And that's kind of the idea. So I hope it adds you some value, and let's hop in. Okay, so just like Orlando has the theme parks and Tampa has the River District and they have the Tampa Bay Bucks and they have South Tampa and Clearwater has Clearwater Beach and Bel Air. And St. Augustine has the historic charm and all this kind of stuff. Sarasota has something that I think is really distinct in what makes it kind of this mecca of why people view it the way it is. And it's evolved over time, and there's an evolution of where it sits and all this kind of stuff. And I think really notably, in my opinion, this exists in this relatively small square radius that kind of gives you the best of every reason to be in Sarasota if everything's equal, price, everything, right? So I want to talk about that specifically. Okay, and the area that I'm speaking about is kind of this magical triangle that exists from very close western mainland outside of downtown Sarasota, west of the trail, north Siesta Key, and mid to south Longboat Key and Lido. And this little area, it's this little corridor, basically encompasses everything that brings people to Sarasota all at once. So when I'm talking about special, I'm not talking about special as in like the surrounding vicinity, but I'm talking about a unique place in the country, potentially the world as a whole. And it's just the way that it collides, it's so unique. And hence why you see kind of the demand and the prices where they're at in those areas is because of what the offering is and what the drawbacks are not. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what these areas are, and then we'll talk about what makes them special. So west of the trail basically is the mainland portion of this conversation. And west of the trail, the reason that it's so special is that it's the closest strip of mainland before you actually cross over to the beaches. Since all of our beaches are like Siesta Key and Longboat Key, these are all barrier islands, right? So you're either on the beach or you're not. And the trail is US 41, and that runs up and down very far. But it's the road that runs parallel to I-75 to the east. And there's this little strip of mainland with a bunch of residential neighborhoods it basically bumps against Sarasota Bay. It's really close to downtown. So it sits inside downtown, but outside of Sarasota Bay, and you're not quite on the beach yet, but you have super easy access to hop to both northern Siesta Key Beach and then Longboat Key and Lido Key. So therein lies my favorite ROI dynamic in real estate, right? As old as it gets, is you have access to everything. You're not far from anything, and you're hugged up against things that are never gonna get less of what they are, right? You hug against the bay and the beach and a downtown area. So you have all these intangible things. And then beyond that, like Sarasota as a whole is just really unique in the fact that our downtown is super different, right? It's like kind of an upscale artsy enclave type of downtown. I mean, it was very inspired by Ringling's evolution here and all this kind of stuff, but it's a very clean upscale downtown. And our downtown sits one street over from the bay, and that street didn't exist always, right? So the whole downtown is so coastal that our main urban business district, that's where my office sits, our main business district is 2 to 3 miles from the closest beach. So it makes, if you can sit somewhere in the middle there, you have access to all that stuff, So it doesn't work for everybody, right? And it's not really suburban housing and that kind of thing to a certain extent. But that's why you can understand the value proposition is as old as it gets as far as the rules of how, real estate maybe should work. And an ROI standpoint, like whether there's a bubble or not. And, I think there's a little bit more bubble that exists around perceived value of downtown districts. But when you're talking coastal land and where Sarasota sits on a map as far as proximity to other Florida cities, I'm not sure that's gonna, I mean, I don't know how that goes down, right? So that's not just gonna burst all of a sudden, because that value proposition is not gonna get worse with time. So that's kind of west of the trail. And then the other, I guess, so-called dots on that triangle I was talking about are basically the other areas of where you'd be on the beach, but kind of in a similar vein to this one. So west of the trail is really, really interesting because you get either beach access and downtown is the closest, right? So if you sit in the middle of anywhere, that might be the one, but then you might actually also want to be on the beach. So like if you don't go too far up Longboat Key, so you stay kind of north of St. Armand Circle, but not too far up Longboat, just north of Lido Beach. And then the Siesta Key main beach is in the northern on the island, right? So if you don't go too far south towards Stickney Point, which is the second bridge, the South Bridge, and you stay kind of north of the beach if you can, then what it is it's what you're gonna want, right? The day-to-day living, unless like if you're a beach person, you wanna putt around the beach, you wanna live and breathe that lifestyle, that's different than this conversation. But this is about not losing access to anything. And what you wanna be able to do is if you're on the beach, you wanna be able to hop off. And you wanna be able to be in downtown and eat out there and all that kind of stuff quickly. If you get too far up the beach, right? If you're in the wrong part of the Longboat, it's gonna be 45 minutes just to downtown Sarasota. So that's kind of why I'm not encompassing the entire beach for this conversation, because this is a triangle that, you know, I drew myself. It's my opinion of it, but that's what I think. It's an access thing, right? Like you do not want to be too deep, or it's not going to really live the way you think it's going to live how it looks, you know, kind of on the internet or whatever. So that would be kind of our triangle, right? It's west of the trail, the closest mainland to the beach, but not going too far north or south. And then the tips of both Siesta Key and Longboat Key, because I think from, you know, growing up here and kind of what I think of would be the valuable part of this city, everybody in the suburbs, right? Like they're looking for the closest suburb to the coast, right? The coast is this area. So anywhere in the city beyond living the Venice's version of this, anywhere in the city, people are trying to get close to the same stuff, right? And what this conversation is about living in it. So I wanted to point that out. I'm gonna actually give context to this whole conversation, right? Like talking about this without broadly and not talking about the real estate in it, that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm gonna talk about real estate in the last 12 months. I'm gonna talk about what's active. And again, I got that tool that would be really helpful. It's literally the raw data detail on every single sale that happened in the last 12 months, every active listing. So keep that in mind if you wanna shoot me a note. Check out the description as well. But yeah, I hope that was articulate enough for you to understand that kind of concept. Is I think these things become super simplistic and every city has a version of this. And again, I think the downtown districts that are really hyped, like downtown Tampa, St. Petersburg even more, is a great example of this, right? Like that's a perceived value. Well, that one makes me actually a little nervous because it's not that close to the beach, right? So you have the downtown district and you can value that whatever you want, but that's way more in perceived value in my opinion, because that's the draw. It's just downtown. So I mean, again, a good spot on the map overall, but it's not like downtown St. Pete's near the beach, and neither is downtown Tampa being way inland, right? So I think Sarasota is special in the fact that it provides all of that at once. And that's why I'm so high on like the downtown coastal proximity, because you're so insulated, right? I don't know how you mess that up. I mean, and these things don't just all of a sudden sell for $1 trillion more every year, you know? But I think if anything is gonna appreciate over time, and really not even appreciation as much as risk mitigation to value going down, it's this, right? Because I don't know if the lifestyle gets any better on where Sarasota sits in this little bubble. So anyway, so I hope that added some value there. Let's talk a little bit about real estate specifically. Okay, so again, like please reference the tool later on. I'm gonna kind of riff off the top of my head of what I remember from the analysis, but let's talk about the real estate in the last 12 months first, and then I'll compare that against, which would be more comparable and more value to compare that against the active market stuff now after we talk about the past. So over the last 12 months, we've done, it was 1,250 sales in this corridor I'm speaking about. The average sale was 1.2 million, which isn't generally surprising probably if you're familiar with this market, but that's kind of interesting because that's misleading, right? Like I talk about average versus median a lot. So what's interesting about this is 320 of those 1,250 sales were below 500K. And obviously, right, very condo heavy here. So this leads a little bit into the North Siesta Key kind of rental market value, which I'll talk about in a second. But then another 35% of those existed from 500 to 1 million. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, so you got a good chunk that, you know, all these properties aren't sitting super, super high, but you have some outliers that definitely push you up, you know? And then when you get into that, like that 1 million to 4 million, it, in a vague way of saying it it doesn't actually differ that incredibly, which is interesting, right? So like let's talk single families specifically. Like a single family house from like 1.5 to 4, from my experience, like that's not really a beach. That's not a beach frontage in the heavy majority, right? So that's, you should be able to get access to the bay, either west of the trail or on the fringe of the beaches. But that you're gonna need to really get well above 4 to kind of get the golf front. Now condos give you a little bit different version, right? Because it's just more efficient because it goes upward and takes up less space, all that kind of stuff, you know? So you might be a little bit higher fees, but achieve, that's some food for thought there. If you're in that price range, the condo might be the most efficient buy if you want beachfront. So I get like, this is like, it's weird to talk about, like, depending on your perspective, right? About the value, but my kind of take on it is, what's interesting to me, knowing what people pay in other cities for what they pay for. I think like if you take one, like, I mean, what we got, like probably over 50%. Now, oh, another thing real quick, the single family and the condominium sales of the 1250 was almost dead even, 50-50 split. So that's kind of interesting. But so it's not all just condos, you know, like a lot of people feel. But, and then, you know, west of the trail is really heavy single family home. So a little bit of weight there. But, so I think, like, in my take of what I kind of understand people pay, not just home value, but like taxes are unbelievable. People are paying $30K for regular houses, which would be like a luxury beach house here in taxes. So that's kind of crazy. But total cost of ownership of being able to be in this corridor and how special it is for the price. I mean, like a modern, nice, really nice house for like 1.5 million. Like, I get it's not no money, but in perspective to what people pay in the Northeast and Canada, and especially California, I think it's an unbelievable value. So to me, like this is I think it's only gonna get worse, because I just think the value proposition's way too heavy compared to like what people deal with in other locations that being colder, more locked down, costs more money for half of what you would get here for like a more pleasant lifestyle, arguably. So that to me is like, I think, and that's what the sales show me too. Like 1 to 2 million bucket is the highest year-over-year sales increase every single market I've looked at this year so far, taking 2020 versus 19. So just food for thought there. That's kind of my take on it. Let's talk. So I hope that helps a little bit. Again, reference the tool. Let's talk a little bit about what's currently active. Okay, so I'm sure it's not new news to anyone related to the current demand type of issues going on, but talking about active listings, this it's really telling to kind of see what people are trying to get based on like no supply. So what you have right now is you have about 182 total listings amongst condo and single family in the same section. Now, again, I said last year was a 1.2 million average sales price. Right now, the average listing's at $2 million on average. And then what's more telling is that the average square foot of list price, the average price per square foot of list price is more than $100 than the average sold price from 12 months prior. So again, a lot of these things, I don't know if they land at that price, but this supply and demand thing just creates these like pretty normal stretches of people just trying to get more because of lack of supply. Now these things have to bump against kind of normal kind of rules related to like appreciation. But I mean, cash deals can sell for basically whatever the people are willing to pay because there's no appraisal. But what I'm not seeing people grossly overpay on average, right? And there's outliers in there and that kind of thing. But what these things are kind of self-correcting. I think people are gonna get more now than they were last year at the same time. But I don't see it being 50% more, 25% more, whatever. I see it being slight increases just based on people looking at opportunity cost of waiting versus buying now. Kind of sums up like the active listings right now in that district. What's super interesting, again, to that same conversation I mentioned about the 12-month stuff, is that over 65% of those 182 listings are under $1 million. I think you got more of the same of what a lot happened last year as far as the condominium sales and all that kind of thing. Okay, and now that you had that kind of download of information, I think the coolest part about this conversation is that it's so learnable. Once you kind of understand the essence of a city, if that makes sense, it's so learnable because everything's an offshoot of that same value proposition, right? It's just like I talked about the suburbs of like, so you want to be west of trail, right? And you don't want to pay that, or you can't pay that or whatever. Then there's ways to kind of adjust from there. And one of those ways would be going east of the trail. So slightly just over 41, maybe you lose 2 minutes in actual lifestyle. Significant savings by just crossing literally 41. Feels very different, but proximity wise is right there. Or like the beaches, right? North Siesta versus like you go south towards like Stickney Point Road or Turtle Beach on the lower end. That's a way to save money. And then Longboat Key has its own variation or whatever. So but again, this is all saying this is my star. This is what I want, and then I'm basically gonna back away based on taking some sort of intentional sacrifice of either criteria or just willingness of what you want to do at the given time. But once you understand the thing, I mean, you just understand it. So I think that is just like the suburbs, right? Like Lakewood Ranch versus Palmer Ranch versus Venice. Again, everybody's trying to do the same thing for the most part, and you're one of those two scenarios. So it's a little easier for me to understand the area if you're not super familiar with like the history of it, by using that conversation in your whole kind of shopping experience. Obviously someone like me could give you flavor to it or whatever, but again, it's the same conversation, right? It even makes you dangerous enough where you don't have to know an area deeply, but you can know who doesn't know an area deeply from kind of, if you feel like you got a grasp of this kind of stuff and you believe, you know, how I believe the market looks. So anyway, that was kind of my blurb for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed, you know, Harbor Acres. It's lovely, super nice area. Some other notable areas west of trail would be like McClellan Park, Oyster Bay, Granada. Really, you have the Southside Village right by Sarasota Memorial Hospital. Super, super nice. Really special about our area. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap up here. Please stick around. I'll shoot some other videos. Please check out the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like this style. Let me know if there's another topic you're interested in, and I will see you on the next one.